We have more urethane discussion. Today, what we are going to do is look at USBC's original Facebook post about their 4 main points against urethane, why they're looking into a potential ban on urethane, and we're going to try to answer some of the bigger comments that are out here. There are a lot of comments. There are actually, if we look at it, 1.7 thousand comments on this post with 1.4 thousand reactions. If you ever are on socials and you see that the comments is higher than the reactions, you know something bad's going to happen. We're going to go through a lot of these comments, a lot of the top comments, and try to give actual explanations for some of the things that people are talking about. Now, it's a lot of angry people, so we're going to try to keep it positive here, but we're going to do this. This is going to be very, very interesting, but let me know what you guys think of it below. Otherwise, make sure to subscribe if you haven't. It's the best way to help support the channel. But let's get into these 1.7 thousand comments. Now, luckily, these are filtered from most reactions to least usually, or most relevant to least relevant. So let's get into it. We are on our ZVL Bowling Facebook account. If you have a Facebook, make sure to drop us a follow. But let's go into it. Comment number 1. How about USBC starts giving back to its bowlers instead of just taking their money and worrying about the integrity and development challenges from equipment? I'm not saying give awards to adults, start giving awards, patches, small gifts to youth bowlers again. That's how you keep the sport going and help keep the youth involved. It's a very good point, honestly. It's a very good point that it'd be cool to give the youth more awards. The one issue with this is USBC doesn't make much money. They're not broke, they're not losing money, but they are barely gaining money. So USBC puts a lot of money into youth and smart programs and things like that. Into youth tournaments, into youth development, junior gold. Junior gold is a massive money dump. So this is a good point that'd be really cool to see more awards coming into bowling for youth bowlers. I don't think that's going to keep youth bowlers around. I don't think awards do that. I think there's other ways that they can try to boost it. But, that's not a terrible point by this guy. Not too angry, which is good, but it's really not about urethane at all. It's more of a what about this thing? All right, Ray. Quit listening to the hollering. Urethane has been used for decades. If you want to do something good for the game, ban reactive. Urethane is a much more fair option. I can't believe that has 140 likes. Let's debunk this one pretty hard quick. This is one of the biggest arguments against urethane is it's been used for decades. Well, it isn't urethane that was used for decades. The old AMF angles and the balls from the 80s and 90s are not relatively close, even remotely close, to what people are using today. The purple hammer, the pitch black, the 78, the black hammer, all of those are radically different than those balls. It is one of the biggest missteps in bowling is that urethane word has been used for current urethane and old urethane. They aren't the same thing. These are radically different. These are bowling balls that get much softer. They hook eons more because there is reactive in them. And these companies were able to make this very unique formula of something of a ball that gets softer, that hooks a lot, hooks in the right part of the lane, and can score on a lot of different conditions and give you a lot of area of miss room. It's always interesting when it's a lot of the bowlers who are pushing for bowling to go back to rubber and plastic and all that, because a urethane ban actually benefits you because bowling becomes more of a shot making game compared to with urethane, your margin of error gets big. That's one of the biggest arguments against it right now of why it is so easy to use. But reactive will never be banned. That just ain't happening. Let's go to Kyle. Urethane has been around longer than reactive. If a bowler can't handle the oil being carried down, then they need to practice and learn to adjust. Scores were not as high on average when urethane was a go-to ball. Again, we already talked about the one. Urethane currently is not similar to the old urethanes of the 80s and 90s. The adjustment argument is one of the biggest arguments against urethane right now. Now, this one is tough because if you're on a house shot, that's one of the easiest things to say is just get better, just be better. It's a skill issue. When you're on, say, a sport shot, hard pattern, PBA tour, whatever it may be, bowling against really high-level bowlers, scores are going to be high. Scores are going to be very high to be able to make it to that next round. Now, if you throw a lot of urethane, what urethane does, it carries down more oil than almost any other ball in the market. That oil can get put anywhere down lane in front of the head pin. If there's a lot of oil that forms in front of that head pin, there ends up being issues because you don't get as many off hits. When we talk about an off hit, we're saying if your ball doesn't go perfectly flush through the pocket, then you still get a strike. That's an off hit. Swisher shots, messengers, things like that are more off hits than anything. Those lower rev rate bowlers will have a harder time getting those off hits when that puddle of oil is in front of the head pin. That's a really big issue because it gives a severe advantage to the high rev bowlers who can stay in that urethane, who have more miss room than you do with reactive on these hard conditions and still get those off hits. That's why when you look at a PBA Tour event, you might notice everybody in the field does really well game one when they're all throwing urethane. But once you get further on into the day, you're going to notice a lot of the scores of the lower rev guys get lower and lower and lower. That's why right now the PBA Tour is dominated by two-handers and by high rev bowlers, is because that helps you get those extra off hits, but you still have all that miss room if you're able to stick with urethane. So there is a fair argument with the adjustment, especially with a lot of league bowlers or the lower amateur tournaments, but there is an argument against it as well, especially on the higher level. Let's keep on running, though. Michael Adams, throwing urethane is good defense, especially with so many that cannot bowl around it. But I like that way. Do not ban urethane. Bowlers need to play around it. Again, it goes into the adjustment, but he has a fair point that like urethane is generally can be seen as a defensive tactic. It's really the one of the few ways to actually play defense in bowling without, you know, mental games is throwing a a ball with a lot of surface or a urethane ball to really mess up the pattern. Now you're messing up your own pattern when you're doing it, which is tough, but you're hoping that you can still do better than your opponent. So there is an argument in that. I have seen people try to play defense. Kind of an unwritten rule that you don't do this that often, more like a gentleman's rule type thing, but it gets broken all the time. Travis Hansen, when you're able to prove urethane doesn't get softer by your contact patch study, you continuing to claim it does, even though you have 40 years of bowling balls out in the wild and storage. This one is just, unfortunately, people thinking that urethane doesn't get softer. It's been proven by multiple groups. The only group that has come out against it is Brunswick. That is because it has been proven. It's because they want their purple hammer stales to stay high. They were the ones impacted most by the softness ban. So urethanes do get softer. It's been proven by many different groups at this point in time. So that unfortunately has been deemed false. Now this comment was really, really long. Let's get into this one though. It has a lot of likes on it. Nick, being able to utilize urethane to any positive degree is not a guarantee just given by urethane. It is a tool just as reactive or plastic is. If bowlers can't adapt, then perhaps it isn't those who use urethane that lack versatility, those who can't find or make a path through. Game's evolution isn't something meant to be hindered or restricted by reason. You can't keep up, it's best you stay behind. Yes, bowlers will use urethanes on conditions that don't call for them. That is life, to use the right ball for every shot of league. If there is such an outrage about bowlers ruining lanes, why isn't there with reactive and the insane amount of surface put on reactive resin? Defense in bowling is necessary. This line I strongly disagree with. Defense isn't really a thing in bowling in a lot of aspects. A lot of people disagree with that. You want to call bowling a sport, the inclusion of defense isn't arguable. So he goes into a little bit deeper on that. The scores are only guidelines for determining loss, victory, and how much money you wasted in your sweeper. So it gets a little bit into defense. This is a very well stated comment from Nick. Like, nice job, very well worded and everything. He makes some very good points. Bowler can't adapt, then perhaps it isn't those who use urethane that lack versatility, but those who can't find or make a path through. This, again, I just proved about the adjustment side. This is mainly for professional and for high-level sport. League isn't really affected as much by this. This is a whole different argument when we talk about league for what he's stating here. Now, urethane is used on conditions that don't call for them. That is life. This is one of the bigger eye-opening pieces with urethane is Junior Gold 2025 was mainly urethane. It was a urethane fest. There are many pictures of racks that were just purple hammers and maybe one pitch black. They were using it on everything because it worked. It was the best option. It still gave you that miss room. If you just hit it with enough surface, your ball is going to hook, go through the pins, and you're going to score well. You're not going to score bad, but you're not going to score. Some people won't score insanely high unless you have that rev rate or have that extra power. So yes, there is a fair point in here. Urethane does not need to be used on everything, but it is able to be used on everything if soft enough. Now, the PBA really helped show us that urethane doesn't need to be used if it's hard enough. They showed that the IQ 78 and the Black Hammer were too hard for a lot of conditions, so they couldn't actually throw them. Whereas the Purple Hammers, the Pitch Blacks, the softer ones, they've really been able to be used on everything because bowlers' power level has gone up higher than ever before. 500 rev rates used to be a myth. now it is not common, but you see it more often than you would ever expect. So that is one of the issues with that side of it. We talked about defense a little bit, so we'll ignore that one. Now, the one thing you're going to notice here is that all of these comments so far have actually been anti-ban. I'm trying to stay in the middle on this one, just discussing people's comments and being able to refute the misinformation. Unfortunately, there hasn't been any that are actually pro urethane ban. So if hopefully we can find a couple of them going through, but so far it's just been anti-ban. Nicholas, do not ban urethane when the sport is about adapting to the play environment. We talked about adjustment already. Chris, as someone who took 27 years off before reactive resin was a thing, urethane is not the cheat code, is the reactive resin ball. So that's somebody who bowled with old urethane. The advantage it gives a high rev bowler, I don't know what that symbol is, appears to be the problem. It will not affect my passion for the sport. That's really good to hear, though. That's a really positive way to look at it. At the end of the day, does this affect all of us? No, it doesn't. If you're somebody who bowls league, this shouldn't affect you. You might have one ball that you aren't going to be able to throw anymore, but you really shouldn't need urethane for league. There are much better options that are going to get through the pins in a better way. This mainly affects those bowlers who bowl on those high-level amateur events, those PBA events, or those sport shot events. That's really what this ban is pinpointing. Ian, I averaged 10 pins higher than I have in 3 years with a teammate throwing urethane. Didn't make a difference because I knew what to do with my hand and made the correct decision. Don't turn bowling into a joke. So we talked about adjustment already. There are ways that urethane can make a lane easier if used properly. If used improperly, then it can make the lanes eons tougher. Adam, take away urethane. Everyone will just chalk the big ace in with 80 grit to create the same exact effect with less carry down. Now, this one is very much not true. You cannot recreate a urethane's ball reaction. Bowling companies have been trying it for years. We just had the Level come out. We had the New Blue. We had the Rattler NU. We have the Tank Rampage Pearl. We have all the Tank series balls. Those are all reactive balls, but they're trying to mimic urethane. It's just not possible. You cannot create what urethane can create. Reactive balls, it doesn't matter how much surface you put on it, what kind of short pin layout you put on it, you cannot mimic urethane. So no matter what you do, you will never be able to mimic urethane, a purple hammer, a pitch black, with any other ball on the market if they end up going away. All right, let's hit a couple more. William, I will bet you that half the bowling balls at Junior Gold are urethane. And he is actually, I don't know the stats, but he is fairly accurate on that one. There was more urethane than I ever would have expected. Hearing about, I've seen her talk to a few bowlers that went, a few adults that went, saw a lot of pictures. There were a lot of purple hammers that were out. All right, let's hit this one. Ricky, I get some of the points made, but urethane is a useful tool on difficult patterns. Learn to use it and bowl around it. Bowling isn't always supposed to be a cakewalk. The softening of the urethane is a legitimate concern. Ricky, I think this is a fantastic point from him. He hits a really good middle ground on this. Urethane is a useful tool on difficult patterns. 100%. Urethane is there to help and benefit on those really tricky and really tough oil patterns. I'm 100% with this. Urethane is a fantastic tool and should be used as a tool, and that is very well stated to use tool there. Learn to get used to a bowl around it. Bowling isn't always supposed to be a cakewalk, and the softening of the urethane is a concern, though. He actually is the first one to mention the softness of urethanes being an issue. Very good points on Ricky's part. That is by far and away the most important piece of USBC's argument, is the softness and the inability to be able to govern that softness of the urethane. So nice job, Ricky, on that. Able to hit the don't ban it, but also there are issues side of it. That is actually what Belmonte came out and redid. He had a long post about lane integrity, but then he came out with a second post saying, but if a bowling ball is illegal, we should not have it around. And that is a very good point on his part, that we need to just get rid of illegal bowling balls. All right, let's scroll a little bit more. This is the first one we've actually had with this. Cut the strings first. There was a lot of arguments against strings. It's very, it's just a whole different argument that doesn't need to happen here. I don't know what that is. No different than one-handers compared to two-handers. Let's hit this 38-1 from Joseph Wiseman. It's okay for events to take place with okay, nope, that's a string one. More string talks. Let's see. As you can see, people are really happy about this. We have a 1981. Huge. We'll skip that because we already hit it. Paul, I'm confused. Urethane was around way before reactive. They are not the same. Gerald, if they're going to ban it, they should ban spare balls as well. We haven't seen this argument yet. That's a very interesting one. This is one I had actually written down that I wanted to hit before the end of this video, is that are they going to ban plastic balls? The answer is simply no, they're not going to ban plastic balls. But I mean, some people are seeing it as like, if urethane makes it too easy, get rid of plastic because it makes spares too easy. It's an odd argument, but I can see where they're coming from. If you think urethane is only going because it is just a cheat code, it is too easy to use. And while it is easier to use in some situations, in a lot of hard situations, that isn't all of the reasons that USB-C is looking into. But that is a good rebuttal. I respect that. I take out the plastic piece, but I respect otherwise. Fair point. A good friend of the channel, Will had a really good point. Just ban differentials under X. Urethane has nothing to do with the carry down. It's the flare lines that cause it. Most urethanes have low differentials. So this is such a good point. Shout out Will. He was a college bowler. This is a really good point because urethane balls suck if they have too high of differential because they flare. There's a reason the Black Widow Pink, the Hot Cell, the Zen U, all of those bowling balls were not seen as very good by the general population. They had too much differential and they didn't look good for more than about a half game to a game. Once the front part of the lane was gone, these balls sucked. So that's a really good point, is get rid of differentials under a certain amount. Now the reason that you don't have differential minimum limits is because of entry level equipment. A lot of those really, really low end entry level balls have really low differentials. But urethane also use those tiny, tiny cores in all of their equipment. Really high RG, really low differential. Those are the only urethanes that have been able to keep up. So a very, very good point on Will's part. I hope this video helped get rid of a few of the misconceptions with the urethane argument. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to hit the side of the argument where people wanted the ban because the comment section was just filled with people that do not want the ban. Now, at the end of the day, remember, this doesn't affect everybody. If you don't own a urethane, it doesn't affect you. If you own one urethane and you use it for your house shot, this doesn't really affect you. You can probably get higher scores with a reactive ball anyway if you choose the right one. Don't let your pro shop give you a ball that isn't going to fit you well. That's what we try to help make solutions for on this channel. So if you have questions about what you want to look towards, if you don't want to throw urethane on a house shot, please let me know down below in the comments, in my email, or any of my DMs on any of my other platforms. Otherwise, thank you guys for watching. This probably won't be the end of the urethane argument. It is the #1 topic in all of bowling. We'll probably cover it more, so stay tuned for that. Otherwise, I will see you on the next one.